الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ونعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So we stopped at Ma'rifatu Asakir al-Qalb, the how do you know the soldiers of the heart. So I was thinking, maybe just for the benefit of those who just joined, if we can just go back through quickly those last two chapters, and then we can carry on from there. There's a beautiful chapter coming up which I think will benefit us all, inshallah. So let's take a look at Limada Khuliq al-Qalb once again, and I'm just going to go through this real quickly. So he says, لماذا خلق القلب? Why was the heart created? اعلم أن النفس مركب القلب وللقلب عساكر كما قال سبحانه وتعالى وما يعلم جنود ربك إلا هو. He says, know that the nafs, the soul, is the vessel and the riding beast for the heart. And to the heart are all the soldiers, all the troops. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, no one knows the armies of your Lord except for him. That's from Surah Al-Muddathir. So it's important, first of all, to know that when he's talking about nafsi, there are two angles that he approaches that with. One is the soul as a body, as the essence of the human being. And the other is with regards to the self, which is the nature of the soul. So there is the self and then there is the soul. And some of these attributions that he's going to give, the shahwa and the ghadab, are related. They are faculties of the soul, but they're also attributes of the self. And that's the difference when we say in English, we say like, my soul is invigorated. We're talking about the actual essential body of the soul. But then when we say you're being selfish, it means that the soul is now looking only to itself as opposed to being selfless, looking towards others. So here he's saying that the soul is like the body. That's the vessel for the heart. وَالْقَلْبُ مَخْلُوقٌ لِعَمَلِ الْآخِرَةِ طَلَبًا لِسَعَادَةِ. The heart was created for an otherworldly action, for otherworldly deeds and actions. In its seeking, for it to seek out its felicity, its contentment. It was not meant to seek out actions or to perform actions of this world. That's not the job of the heart. It's the body that engages in this world, and it's the body that performs the actions of this world. The heart was meant to perform the actions for the akhirah, and it seeks out contentment through those actions. وَسَعَادَتُهُ مَعْرِفَةُ رَبِّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَ. Its happiness, its contentment is in knowing its Lord, the majestic and the exalted. That's where it finds its true contentment. Everything else is not going to give it any contentment. وَمَعْرِفَةُ رَبِّهِ تَعَالَى تَسْحُلُ لَهُ مِنْ سُنِعِ اللَّهِ. It's the knowledge that of Allah that it's seeking. It achieves that through knowing the creation of Allah. So through knowing the creation is how we eventually come to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that knowing of creation is not in its informative aspects, not in knowing what are its compositional elements. Those are all instruments. That's the alam, right? So the alam is, as we said, it's an ismu ala. It's a noun of instrumentation that helps you facilitate the knowing itself, the ilm. So you know ilm, or you gain ilm through the alam. But that has to take you across. And inshallah, and this is why I wanted to revise this, because he's now going to talk about that in the following chapter. وَهُوَ مِنْ جُمْلَةِ عَالَمِهِ وَلَا تَسْحُلُ لَهُ مَعْرِفَةُ عَجَائِبَ الْعَالَمِ إِلَّا مِنْ طَرِيقِ الْحَوَاسِ. And it, the heart, is from the totality of Allah's creation, from all of the worlds that Allah has created. The heart is also part of this world. So in itself, it has to know It has to know everything that Allah has created, but it also has to know itself. It also has to reach a point whereby it tries to figure out who it is, or in this case, the being has to eventually try to understand who he is or who she is and why she exists and what is their purpose. And it cannot come to know things, the marvels of the world, except through the senses. And because we are created as material beings, we've been given these senses, so it's through the senses that we come to know the world around us. وَالْحَوَاسُ مِنَ الْقَلْبِ, they are an extension of the heart. وَالْقَالِبُ مَرْكَبُهُ, the qalib, which is the body now, so the qalb, that's the heart, the qalib is the body that in where the heart is contained, is its vessel. ثُمَّ مَعْرِفَةُ صَيْدِهِ وَمَعْرِفَةُ شَبَكَتِهِ, and so you have to know the hunt, you have to know how you're going to hunt your felicity, your contentment, and you have to know the net with which you're going to hunt, the instruments. So you need to know how you're going to acquire this ma'rifah of Allah, and you also need to know the instruments that will help you find that ma'rifah. So the scholars say it as a principle, أَهَمُّهَا أَقَائِدٌ ثُمَّ الْفُرُوعُ, that you establish, the most important element is first of all to establish your creedal aspects, your core belief system, because if your heart has not found something to find conviction in, then it is always going to be in a state of agitation. So build that foundation first, ثُمَّ الْفُرُوعُ, and then embark on the branches of practice. Tasawwufun, and then you'd go through the purification process of the heart. وَآلَةٌ بِهَا شُرُوعٌ, and then you start with taking an instrument with which you will now begin this process of going towards ma'rifatullah. And the scholars all agreed upon as ijma', al-Arabiyyatu miftahul ulum. Arabic is the key to the sciences, to the knowledges. وَالْقَالِبُ لَا يَقُومُ إِلَّا بِالطُّعَامِ وَالشَّرَابِ وَالْحَرَارَةِ وَالرُّطُوبَةِ. The body cannot survive without food, without drink, without heat, without moisture. وَهُوَ ضَعِيفٌ عَلَى خَطْرٍ مِنَ الْجُوعِ وَالْعَطْشِ فِي الْبَاطِنِ. It is weak because it is always in danger from hunger and thirst in the inward aspect of it. From the inside of the body, it needs food and nourishment to survive. وَعَلَى خَطْرٍ مِنَ الْمَاءِ وَالنَّارِ فِي الظَّاهِرِ. And in the outward aspects, it is always at the mercy of the elements like water or fire. هُوَ مُقَابِلٌ أَعْدَاءً كَثِيرَةً. It's got many outward enemies that are always threatening it. It's always facing these different kinds of threats in the outward world. Then he says in the next chapter, فَصْلُ مَعْرِفَةُ عَسَاكِرِ الْقَلْبِ. How do you know what are the extensions? What are the troops, the soldiers of the heart? وَتَحْتَاجُ أَن تَعْرِفَ الْعَسْكَرَيْنِ. You have to know that there are two specific groups of these troops. There are two types of troops. وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ الْعَسْكَرَ الظَّاهِرَ. One of it is the outward troops. وَهُوَ الشَّهْوَةُ وَالْغَضَبُ. This is the shahwa, which is the desires, and the ghadab, which are your emotions or the anger. Anger is the seat of emotions, and this is why they call it ghadab, or they are calling it emotion, because it's the basic, it's the lowest form of emotion that a being can feel. And shahwa, which is greed or desire, is the lowest form of that category. وَمَنَازِلُهُمْ فِي الْيَدَيْنِ وَالرِّجْلَيْنِ وَالْعَيْنَيْنِ وَالْأُذْنَيْنِ وَجَمِيعُ الْأَعْدَاءِ. It's their places of alightment, their abodes, are in the hands and the legs and the eyes and the ears and all the other organs of the body. وَأَمَّا الْعَسْكَرَ الْبَاطِنِ. As for the inward troops, فَمَنَازِلُهُ فِي الدِّمَاغِ. Its place of alightment is in the brain. وَهُوَ قُوَّ الْخَيَالِ وَالتَّفَكُّرِ وَالْحِفْظِ وَالتَّذَكُّرِ وَالْوَهَمِ. And these, the powers of these are the imagination, the imaginative faculty, khayal, tafakkur, which is reflection or thought, hifth, which is the memory, tadhkir or tadakkur, which is the recollection, and wahm, which is the supposition or the estimation. It is that element that makes you want to ask the question, what if, right? The speculative aspect, or the estimation of something, or the anticipation of something. وَلِكُلِّ قُوَّةٍ مِّنْ هَذِهِ الْقُوَّةِ عَمَلٌ خَاصٌ. Every power or strength or faculty from amongst these faculties has got a specific purpose, and he's going to explain what those purposes of each of these faculties are. فَإِنْ ضَعُفَ وَحْدٌ مِّنْهُمْ ضَعُفُ حَالُ ابْنُ آدَمْ فِي الدَّارَيْنِ. If any of these faculties are deficient, if any of these faculties are weak, then the hal of the human being is going to be weak in both the worlds that he exists in the physical abode and in the spiritual aspect as well. If any of these elements are weak, he's also going to explain why that occurs. وَجُمْلَةُ هَذَيْنِ الْعَسْكَرَيْنِ فِي الْقَلْبِ وَهُوَ أَمِيرُهُمَا. This is the summation of all these troops. It is convergent, it comes together in the heart, and it is their amir, it is their leader. فَإِنْ أَمَرَ اللِّسَانَ أَنْ يَذْكُرَ ذَكَرَ وَإِنْ أَمَرَ الْيَدَ أَنْ تَبْطِشَ بَطَشَتْ وَإِنْ أَمَرَ الرِّجْلَ أَنْ تَسَعَ سَعَتْ. If it commands the tongue to do dhikr, then the tongue is going to obey and do dhikr. If it commands the legs to pursue or to go a certain way, then the legs will do it, right? Because they are all obedient to the Amir. They follow the Amir's guideline. They follow the orders from the Amir. وَذَلِكَ الْحَوَاسَ الْخَمْسَ حَتَّى يَحْفَظَ نَفْسَهُ. These senses are the protectants. They are the ones who will protect you so that you can seek the provision for yourself. كَيْمَ يُدَخِّرَ زَادَ لِلدَّارِ الْآخِرَةِ. And seek out your felicity or seek out the provision for the next life. وَيُحَسِّلَ الصَّيْدَ وَتَتِمَّ التِّجَارَةِ وَيَجْمَعُ بَذَرَ السَّعَادَةِ. So that the soul can also hunt for its own contentment. And thus the transaction is complete. This back and forth between the king and his subjects, that the subjects allow the leader to lead, and the leader serves the subjects by leading them. And they gather the seed of this existential contentment. وَهَؤُلَاءِ طَاعِعُونَ لِلْقَلْبِ كَمَا أَنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ طَاعِعُونَ لِلرَّبِّ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى لَا يُخَالِفُونَ أَمْرَهُ. All of them, all these faculties, the soul, the senses, the brain, the mind, the limbs, the body parts, everything obeys the heart. In the same way that all the malaika, all the angels obey the command of Allah, and they do not dispute him in his amr. That was just a summation of what we did in the last session. Is there any question up until that point? And then we can proceed from there.
I was thinking about something else now related to what you just summarized.
Uh-huh.
I was thinking about how sometimes does the nef ally with the shayateen that's attached to us, the qari, do they like work together sometimes? Or
no, they don't work together. They don't work together in that sense, or ally together in that sense. That's
just what's acceptable to it.
The soul is like a body. Just think of it as a body, and you, who is this conscious being, has been placed inside this soul. So just like the body has got its strengths and its weaknesses, the soul also has its strengths and weaknesses. And the shayateen try to play those against each other. So they try to push you, they try to make you succumb to your weaknesses, and they try to force you to ignore your strengths or to forget or deviate from your strengths. And so this is one part in Islam when it comes to the understanding the problem of free will in Islam, which is not a problem really. It's very simple to understand. And when we ask the question about good and evil in Islam, for other religions like the Christian theology, they say that man is inherently sinful, and so he's bound for hell unless he accepts Jesus as his savior, because Jesus died for the sin of man, so that's how he's going to be saved. But in Islam we say that good is a choice, so you choose to do good, but evil is a capitulation. You give in to evil. Now evil is not existential, it's only as far as this world is concerned. Evil doesn't exist outside this world. So if you give in to it, which is now your lower self, the animal self, then what results from that is the evil. And I think he's going to explain that as far as the shahwa and the ghadab. What are its good points? And then what are its bad points? And he's going to talk about the immorality and the perversion and those kind of aspects, which are the things that we tend to give into. So the shayateen try to play that on you. They give you wrong information and they confuse you. They sow doubt, so that you end up capitulating to evil, right? Because that's what Iblis wants to do. He wants to prove to God that, see, you made a mistake, right? You were saying this is a being who can rise up, but then here you go, he's not rising up. He's giving into the lower self.
One thing you mentioned was really profound when you said it make you forget your strengths. So sometimes you get a new opportunity. So your friend gives you a new opportunity, and you have all this thing about, oh no, you can't do it, you don't have time, you don't want to change, what you're doing currently. It's like, but you're good at it, so that's one thing, like you pointed out, like, wow, forget your strengths.
He's actually going to talk about that. That's one piece he's going to talk about in this next chapter. Oh, sorry, the following chapter, the chapter after that. He's going to talk about fisq. Oh yeah, he's going to talk about al-ajzu wal-futur. Al-ajzu is that weakness, that what you're talking about, that particular piece. There's no drive to do it. Like, I just can't do it. I don't even want to bother. That mindset. He's going to talk about that.
So the doubt and desires are connected to giving into the weakness, and depression, anxiety, all those like bad, negative, this is connected to like forgetting your strengths and like not wanting to do.
Yeah, they end up being like the manifestations of those when you don't actually play to your strengths and overcome your weaknesses. Then what results after that is, the heart ends up not being content. It doesn't ends up not being happy. It ends up being depressed because you didn't actually govern yourself in the right way. Right? Any other question? Okay, let's proceed on the actual topic. I know I just skimmed through that piece, but we have the recording for the previous session, so if you guys still need more, then you could probably go back to that. So here now he's going to talk about في معرفة القلب والعساكره. Now he's going to give you an analogy through which you can actually understand what is the role of each of these components. What is the role of the heart, the soul, the body, and the body's organs, as well as the body's senses. He's going to lay out the whole thing. And this allegory is a beautiful allegory. All the scholars have used it. Imam Al-Nawawi gives something very similar. In fact, it's not verbatim, but it's the same allegory in his Arba'in al-Nawawiyah, in the 6th hadith, when he's talking about when the Prophet ﷺ says, "Inna al-harama bayyinun, inna al-halala bayyinun," and then in the end of the hadith he talks about the heart. So Imam Nawawi uses this analogy to explain the heart. But let's see what Ghazali has written here. So he says, "I'lam annahu qila fi mathal al-mashhur." It has been said in a well-known allegory. And this is what he's saying. إن النفس كالمدينة. The soul is like the city. واليدين والقدمين والجميع الأعداء ذياعها. The hands and the feet and all the body parts are like the surrounding villages and farms. والقوة الشهوانية وليها. The irascible, the concupiscence, the shahwaniya, the shahwa, is like their governor. والقوة الغضبية شحنتها. And the quwa ghadabiyya, the anger, is like its policing force, it's like its charge. وَالْقَلْبُ مَلِكُهَا. The heart is their king. وَالْأَقْلَ وَزِيرُهَا. The aql, the intellect, is its wazir, it's its minister. وَالْمَلِكُ يُدَبِّرُهُمْ حَتَّى تَسْتَقِرَّ مَمْلَكَتُهُ وَأَحْوَالُهُ. The king monitors and manages all of them until the kingdom and its states and conditions stabilize and harmonize. Meaning, he is the one who controls everything until order is maintained in his kingdom, and so that the kingdom flourishes. So, you've got the entire kingdom, which is your physical body. That's your kingdom. This is your domain. And then your soul is its capital city. And the heart is the king who is in his palace in the capital city. And the hands and the legs and all the body parts are like the different villages and the farms and the mines and all the sources of resources. It's where all the wealth is accumulated from to keep the kingdom running. So the hands have got a certain purpose, and so they retrieve certain resources, the legs retrieve certain resources, and then the other organs, each of the organs has a specific function, and so they all work together in this system, right? And it's the Malik, the king, who regulates them all to maintain order and balance and stability. So the heart is the one who regulates everything. لأن الوالي وهو الشهوة كذاب فضولي مخلط. See, the king has to regulate all of them because the governor, which is the shahwa, is a liar. He's meddlesome, he's nosy, right? He's confused. He's not a free thinker, he's a bureaucrat. It's a politician. A bureaucrat or a politician, they follow procedure, they follow rules. They're not free-thinking leaders. They've got a position and a role to play in his government, right? So the king has to do the thinking. The king has to be the one to make sure that he's in line. وَشِحْنَتُهُ وَهُوَ الْغَضَبِ. The police force, the charge, and this is the ghadab. شرير قتال خراب. He's sinister, he's malicious, he's hostile, murderous, like a criminal, right? He's a destroyer. He also has a role to play. He's not a free thinker, he's not a leader. He has to follow procedure. The king is the one who sends the orders from above. فَإِن تَرَكُهُمُ الْمَلِكُ عَلَى مَا هُمْ عَلَيْهِ. If the king leaves these people alone to do whatever they want, حَلَكَتَ الْمَدِينَةِ وَخَرَبَتْ. The city will be destroyed and will be ruined. The soul, if the heart allows the emotions to do what they want to do and the desires to do what they want to do, the soul will be destroyed. فَيَجِبُ أَن يُشَاوِرَ الْمَلِكُ الْوَزِيرِ. It's important that the king always consult with his minister, his wazir. وَيَجْعَلَ الْوَالِي وَالشِّحْنَةِ تَحْتَ يَدَ الْوَزِيرِ. And that he places the police force and the governor under the authority of the wazir, under the authority of the minister. In other words, the heart has to consult with the aql, with the mind. Not that the mind dominates the heart. The heart has to consult with the mind. And that the individual has to place his anger and his desires under the authority of the mind, not the other way around. فإذا فعل ذلك استقرت أحوال المملكة وتعمرت المدينة. If he does that, the state of the kingdom is going to stabilize and the city is going to flourish. If you manage to maintain that order whereby your mind, your aql, has an authority over your anger or your emotions and your desires, then the body is going to be stable. That will eliminate your illnesses that arise from an internal state. It will eliminate the manifestation of things like mental stress, disorders, complexities. The body is going to stabilize. It will function the way it has to function. And likewise, it will give the soul a chance to flourish and to grow and to perform and to cleanse itself, and so that it will also head out to seek its felicity, its contentment. In other words, if you manage to maintain this order of governance within yourself, then your body will be healthy and your mind will be calm and tranquil. Your soul will also be healthy. Your mental state will be healthy. وَكَذَلِكَ الْقَلْبُ يُشَاوِرُ الْعَقْلِ. Likewise, the heart always consults with the mind. And not that the mind dominates the heart. The heart consults with the mind. And the heart says, okay, this is what you think. All right, now let me make a decision on what I'm going to do. Right? وَيَجْعَلَ الشَّهْوَةَ وَالْغَضَبَ تَحْتَ حُكْمِهِ. And it places the shahwa and the ghadab beneath its governance, under its authority, under the aql's authority. حتى تستقر أحوال النفس, until the ahwal al-nafs stabilizes. Now, ahwal al-nafs here is a technical term also in psychology. That's what it means. The psychological state stabilizes. If you place your anger and your desires under the control of your mind, then your psychological state is going to stabilize. ويصل إلى سبب السعادة من معرفة الحضرة الإلهية. So that when it is in a stable state, you can then arrive at this contentment which you will get from ma'rifah of the divine presence, from knowing the divine presence. Because if you're in a state of turbulence, when are you actually going to focus on the thing that actually matters? It's very difficult, and the reality of the world also is like that. People in destabilized regions have a very hard time focusing on things like knowledge and education and all these things when they're out there dealing with the hardships that most of the cases are not even their fault. It's not their doing, right? Like people in the Middle East, in Syria, they have a hard time focusing on their knowledge bases because they're out there dealing with war and destabilized governments and all that. So if the self is not in a stabilized situation, if things are not calm within the self, then it's very difficult for the heart to focus on what it actually wants to do, what it actually wants to pursue. وَلَوْ جَعَلَ الْأَقْلَ تَحْتَ يَدَ الْغَضَبِ وَالشَّهْوَةِ. If the intellect is placed beneath the authority of the shahwa and the ghadab, halakat nafsuhu. The soul is going to be destroyed. The mental state is going to be destroyed. It's going to be upset. وَكَانَ قَلْبُهُ شَقِيًّا فِي الْآخِرَةِ. And then the heart becomes wretched through and through to the akhirah. Right? So a majority of the issues that people are facing in terms of depression, anxiety, agitation, and then bodily manifestations of those, when they increase, when they become overwhelming such that the heart can no longer, it cannot sustain itself anymore, it can't handle the pressure anymore, is because of this, is because the emotions are running wild. They're not being controlled. The police force is not in check. It's out there doing whatever it wants. It's going out there shooting whoever it wants, right? the cops are out there just stopping random people in the streets for just walking or whatever, right? Or just because they're, the police force is not in check. And then on this other side, you've got the governor or the politicians who are corrupted, right? They're just feeding their own pockets. The desires are just fulfilling their own needs. They're not looking out for the needs of the body, because the body is saying, I don't need that much sugar. But then the desire is saying, no, more chocolate cake, right? The body is saying, I don't need alcohol, but the desire is saying, no, it's good for you. It'll take all the worries away. Well, since when does the desire do the thinking for you? Because the desire doesn't know that alcohol doesn't actually help. It's the aql that knows that. The aql is the one that knows that if I consume alcohol, I'm not going to be able to think straight. And therefore, the aql is the one that needs to make that decision. That needs to look and say, no, this is factually true, this is not true. So whatever the shahwa is telling me is a lie. Because the governor is a liar, the politician is a liar. Oh, this is the situation that has arisen here, and the police force is saying, no, we should attack right now, preemptive strike. But the aql is saying, no, you haven't got all your facts straight. You just want to jump in and do what you think is right, but that's not the right move to make here. And then it informs the heart, and the heart makes the ultimate decision. Because it's the heart that looks out for the truth. The truth is comprehended by the heart. The mind, the intellect, doesn't comprehend. That's not the job of the mind. The mind is not a comprehending instrument. The mind only analyzes what's going on. It only analyzes and distinguishes between truth and lie. It's the heart that comprehends. So if the mind also is not kept under check, if the intellect is not kept under check, then the intellect can deceive the heart, especially when it comes to matters of existential truth. And this is where you find so many deviants. Geniuses, very intelligent, smart, they have all the degrees they could possibly accumulate. But look at what they're doing to the world. Look at what sort of decisions they're making. It's a complete mess. And it all boils down from the macrocosm to the microcosm. If you want to see, as an analogy that they have given, that the scholars are giving, look at yourself in this regard. If your government is not kept in check, if it's not following the rules that have been put in place, then this city and this country of yours is going to fall into chaos. It's going to fall to pieces. So then he talks about wazifatul qalb. So let's take a break, inshallah, and then we can continue back again after this in the next chapter. It's a bit long, so I would rather we take a break before we proceed on this. Subhanaka wa bihamdika la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullahu khairan. Alhamdulillah.